Welcome, everybody, on your screens and in our show. And we are looking forward to entertain you and educate you. And so we create some edutainment and the second show in 2025. And as we were talking and chit-chatting also last time a bit about the interesting approaches about how important ERP and software as a service became, it was a no-brainer to talk about ERP and customer experience. Two worlds collide. And to dig into this a bit deeper, we found an honored guest, and we would like to discuss with him on the topic that ERP systems have long been the backbone of internal operations, streamlining finance, supply chain, and inventory management. But in a world where customer experience reigns supreme, how does the back end impact the front end? Before we dive in these and more really exciting questions to start in our topic, I would like to give our honored guest, Dan Aldridge, an opportunity to introduce himself. Welcome, Dan.
Sure. Thank you very much. I am Dan Aldridge. I am an ERP software guy for about 25 years plus. And I started and basically stayed in manufacturing my whole career. And up until recently, I've been a business owner. I built a consulting firm. I worked for several different software firms, ERP software firms. And I also have changed my direction to become a director of marketing for my company, PCG.
Very good.
Well, let's get directly into medias res, or into the depths or undepths of topics. ERP and customer experiences. Two worlds collide. What the heck is customer experience in an ERP world? Ralph. No, sorry, Dad.
That's a good one.
What is customer service in an ERP world?
No, customer experience in an
Customer
ERP
experience.
world. Customer service, where
A service can help to create the experience as well. We can talk on that as well.
and service
Yes.
depends on the vendor, doesn't it? But what is customer experience in an ERP world? What's the definition of customer experience in an ERP world?
It's basically when you have customers interfacing with systems, what is the experience that they're having when they deal with you? It's the customer facing whatever you put forward as being a representation of your company, and the amount of friction or not friction that you present to the customer to make them to make the experience better.
And what's the role of an ERP in there? I mean, that's not exactly customer facing.
Right. So right. So more likely, the ERP has some sort of module attached to it, right? So you have a CRM module for the ERP that's from the ERP vendor, or maybe you have a CRM system like a Salesforce that is interfacing with the ERP. So you get things like leads and sales opportunities and sales, maybe even sales orders that come in through the whatever that interface, that customer facing interface is. Because you're right, normally an ERP is something that you would enter an order into. Could be a lead or an opportunity, right? Could be a lead or an opportunity, but typically entered into a CRM module that fits to the ERP. Sometimes it's within the ERP, right? Sometimes it's without. So you might, in the case of Salesforce, for example, interface to an ERP, you would have these things flowing through a REST API or through an iPaaS that's connected, right? That's connected a separate system. But you also can have, I've seen some interesting scenarios where the ERP company itself created a portal generator, for instance. So a portal generator might be a customer-facing layer that the customer sees, which is much more rich with visuals and things like that. Part master that has drawings and things like photographs of the parts and things like that. That is what the customer sees when they're making an order. So it's not an not an e-commerce. That's also another platform that can be put on front that can allow a customer to order through e-commerce. So like a WooCommerce or a Shopify. But what I was talking about here was a company, one of my old companies, actually, Priority Software. They had this portal generator, which I thought was just brilliant. So they can create customer portals, they can create vendor portals, all kinds of things like that to interface. But it's essentially an extension or a visual layer that gets put over a graphical layer that gets put over the ERP. So you don't see the ERP, the ugliness underneath. You see this nice interface.
I was curious, therefore I raised my question mark. What is your experience in the last 25 years that you would say that the included modules of customer experience CRM are to the benefit of the customer or to the ease of use for the users or the easier integrity, or is it simply crap?
Well, that depends on the vendor, doesn't it? I think that it's gotten a lot better. The CRM modules that are within the ERP, that are actually modules within the ERP as opposed to another module that you buy separately. That's a CRM, right? Because you can have either situation. I think the ones inside of the ERP have become a lot better. I'm familiar a little bit with NetSuite. I think their CRM is quite good, and it's part of the ERP itself, and that's a small and medium solution. It's not like the scale of an SAP or so, but I think that's quite good, and it's inside the ERP. And they have made a move to kind of expand the footprint of the ERP, so you don't need a separate module to bolt on. Now, sometimes you get a situation where particularly in an enterprise, a larger company, that they will have Salesforce already. And they say, we love Salesforce. So we want to integrate Salesforce with whatever ERP platform it is. That's quite easy to do these days with REST APIs. So it used to be quite a painful process, to bolt these things on and require probably some customization of the ERP system itself. But I think those are quite easy to connect these days. And there's even things like Zapier or Zapier. You guys tell me which one it is. I never got that pronunciation right, but that's a very nice, and we've used it in the past to connect, say, a CRM with an ERP, because it's connected on both sides, right? So through REST APIs. So it just passes the information, and they'll have transactions. So they'll say you can pass leads, you can pass opportunities from the CRM into the ERP, and you can. So it assumes, of course, that the ERP has those entities within the ERP system, and they all do these days, pretty much, leads, opportunities, and I've even seen sales quotes. I've seen sales quotes out of there. And I've seen sales orders out of there to be handled from, say, a Salesforce through a Zapier connection or through a connection that's just made through REST API, because they all have open APIs these days. So
Zapier is really magic, and so are Magic XPI and some other similar tools, or a German one called Sinclair, or what was the reason for Salesforce, because in all these years and days without MuleSoft, they had their challenges in exactly connecting to, as a front end, for instance, is an SAP ecosystem, if somebody preferred them instead of the SAP grown solution or others. But that is one side of the medal. And it is an important one, such as how the connectivity is done and how it is working. I believe another interesting aspect is we were just talking on the integration and on the ease of use. So how is the ease of use creating not only for the user a positive experience, but how is that felt in creating an experience to the customer?
Yeah, I mean, if they are able to enter it in a really nice interface, and they don't have to see the ugliness of the ERP behind it, or it's being passed through, then yes, that really improves the customer experience in my mind. I mean, theoretically, you could make a customization, right? And you could make the sales order screen, for instance, available to the customer. But that wouldn't be a very good customer experience, I would argue, because it's clunky. It's the ERP interface is not as nice as, right? So the salespeople are going to be happier with something like a Salesforce, right? And they're dealing with the customers. Also, the customers are going to be happier with dealing with a nice interface. Now, if that's Salesforce and it's integrated through REST APIs to the ERP and it's transparent to them, they're happy. The salespeople are happy, right? They're going to give a better experience if they're not forced to enter a sales order in the ERP as a result of a lead or an opportunity they get in Salesforce, right? They can do everything in one place and never touch the ERP. Then they're going to be happier. So
what you're saying and reiterating is that, well, as far as I hear it, that the engagement that may or may not have an experience as a result, or a good experience as a result, is done through a CRM system. So what's the role of the ERP?
Well, the role of the ERP is to take the orders and process the orders. Mostly. The leads and the opportunities also could be converted over on the ERP side. So it's more of a processing role and an internal role. And that's why, when you see customizations to an ERP system, they're mostly internally focused, right? So they're not customer facing experiences that they're trying to improve or build. And there's a reason for that, right? There's other tools that do it better, or there's other modules that look nicer and that function better, right? I would say that there are certain tools that are very nicely hooked to an ERP, like configure price quote tool, for instance, which can really improve the customer experience, right? So if you build, it's like a configurator. Now, ERPs had configurators from the 90s, right? So most ERPs had some form of configurator. I know SAP, and I used to work for Bond, and then I worked for Infor and everything. Yeah. I'm a Bond.
Warhorse, as me.
Really old. See my gray hair here.
Respect. Bond and all in the old days, that honestly was a world. When I was still at Update on the CRM end, I was envying the guys which were selling Bahn, because they came very close to a solid integrated world, which had the user acceptance and supported engagement of users in the organizations, created some positive experiences also in the customer field. And it was smartly thought through. Yeah.
Yes, Jan Bond's a genius. I really am convinced. But one of the things that was clunky about Bond 4 back in those days was the configurator was there. It was called PCF, by the way. And PCF didn't have any graphical anything, right? Step through features and options, but it's all text-based. And nothing came out of it that was like a drawing or something like that, right? So these days, they put a graphical configurator on it. And I think they had a partner that built this configure price quote tool that they use now, CPQ. And the initial intent was to create the part masters and the bills of material and everything, but it would be very graphical, right? You could choose this feature, this option has a picture of the feature and the option, builds all the constraints logic in, which is the most important thing, of course, in that tool is not presenting the parts or the bills or anything like that. It's the constraint logic that says, if you choose this feature and this option, then you can't choose that option, right? So that's built in. And I would say that has dramatically improved the customer experience if they're using that kind of tool, right? Because they don't have to think about that. And that's the salesperson and the customer doesn't have to think about it. They choose the features and options they want, and the constraints restrict them so that the correct bill of material is presented, the correct pricing and all of that.
And the do-it-yourself approach, such as from the user perspective you are just describing, is everybody nearly got the experience lately or in the last 5 years when he tries to buy a new car and going to the vendor's side and trying to configure the car and just directly sending this out to the favorite dealership in his near surrounding or for the best price to several, and is waiting for the best offer to be made to his setup or a car similar to his wishes coming at his door for a fair price. So that is an experience creating with all what you described, such as that the mishaps are cut out and that you configure what is feasible and what is to be combined. Even that it shows you sometimes exactly what you described as, if you use or go for that option, you have to go for that in extra, even that you didn't want it. Elsewise, sorry, no deal.
Right. Yeah. And it even goes a step further into another piece of software, another module called a PLM, right? Product Lifecycle Management, which has the actual drawing. So this will configure and it will spit out a bill of materials, a BOM, and possibly a routing to go to the shop. And then it will also create a drawing, a custom drawing, and a project to build that item all in one fell swoop, basically. And the PLM performs that function with the creating the drawing. And that's also integrated with AutoCAD. So or whatever CAD that you have, right? Computer assisted design, I think it is, right? So that's all integrated together. And that really, I think, is a huge boost to customer experience.
Assuming it's exposed to the customer in the first place. I mean, all of this could just as easily be hidden on the back end to make life easier for the employee.
That's true. That's true. But I think typically the CPQ would be exposed to the customer because they're configuring it with the salesperson, and then it disappears into the back end, right? Because all the bills of material and the items and all of that stuff are being issued.
These portals and the behind-laying configurators for end users, for end customers, are an interesting example for the ease of use. If we are a bit critical and we go into these user interfaces, how we find them these days, they are more or less, if they are young, round about 10 to 15 years old, and they do minimalistic, some gray shades, and this is coming as the new Salesforce Lightning AI UI. That's all. Guys, girls, please be a bit more inventive, innovative. Try some stuff. So I was at a conference pre-corona, 6-7 years ago, when they really had some very interesting user interfaces. And on the other side, they say, well, why do we still develop user interfaces when within the next 5 to 6 years, everybody is talking into a device and gets its answers? So no more like, if you recall Scotty in an episode of Star Trek,
4,
where he is in the 70s and he is addressing the computer terminal. Hey, computer, do this and that. And it's not responding. It's, what? That's old technology, Stone Age. Yeah.
Yep.
Hello, computer.
Yeah.
It was a great moment.
How quaint, Marshall.
Yeah. Well, I needed to contribute something to the discussion.
Well, it was a good quote, and it looked like, well, there are some similarities, some visual similarities too. Drilling a little back in time. So now, if an ERP is all about efficiency, internal efficiency, and in a world where funds matter, or where there are no unlimited funds, or the other way around, where funds are very limited, if you are now investing into additional efficiencies, means beef up your ERP, isn't that a trade-off versus an investment into experience, which by definition would be, by your definition earlier, would be more on the CRM side of the house?
Yeah, I mean, to some extent it is, right? I mean, there's a limited budget, and if you're in a situation where your ERP is 20 years old or whatever, if it's ECC, it's got to go to S4HANA. There are a lot of internal, I mean, I guess I would make a division between internal and external customers, right? Because, in terms of workflows, in terms of connections to other systems and integrations, in terms of the user interface, although maybe you could argue that the on-prem user interface is Fiori in the case of SAP, and it's not really that much different than what's in S4HANA. But a lot of the advantages of you being on the cloud are big things. And if you're 20 years old, you're falling potentially way behind, and you're customized to the hilt, right? At that point, most of the customizations, a lot of the customizations could be things like reports, for example. I mean, I went into a big company, about $32 billion company, and they had customized bond, where they had thousands of customizations, and about half were reports that they'd written in bond 4. So we just put in a business intelligence, package and said, here, these are all out the window, because we're going to do this, and we're going to put in dashboards and charts and graphs and drill down and all of this stuff that you can't do on those flat reports. Yeah, they were really just trying to get them out to Excel back in those days, right? All the finance people were getting all these reports that were just flat reports that they wanted to export to Excel. So a lot of those were going away, and a lot of them were customizations that were operational type things that a new version of the software, had they been able to upgrade, they weren't able to upgrade, right? Because they customized so badly. So that's the kind of chicken and egg thing you get into, right? You can't upgrade because you're so customized, but you need to upgrade in order to get advantage of all the modernization that you get out of a modern ERP system, right? So they had to, make trade-offs there.
While we're talking about modern, is it possible that generative AI can take the place of those complex integrations, ignoring the fact that, well, not ignoring the fact, but being able to overcome the...
This is a very hot topic.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up.
With Satya Nadella, right?
Yeah.
I think no, not for a while. And I base that on maybe my long years of experience and millions of lines of code and seeing all these back office functions that the ERP does. And I guess kind of questioning why you would replace that whole thing. And what you could do is use AI, and they're already using in use cases that to help the customer experience, right? So you would have a co-pilot kind of situation, right? You have a customer summary, and you could say, hey, give me the sales for the last 3 months or whatever, and it can go query and create a little chart and stuff like that. Now that helps with customer experience, right? Because the salesperson can give information that is prompted by a human, right? And interpreted by a human. I think that that is very helpful and could provide a lot of value. I've also seen some AI use cases, and these are real things, which would be based on pricing, optimal pricing of things that AI will recommend. Also bundling of different parts to say, you know, if I'm a parts dealer or whatever, and I sell these 2 parts, well, these parts went with it, kind of like an Amazon situation, can be very helpful, right? And it might, and Thomas, we talked about this, right? Is helpful for whom? I guess it's helpful for the company because they're upselling or whatever, they're selling more, but it is also helpful to the customer. I mean, you could argue that Amazon's whole business model is doing that, right? Suggesting other things that go with these things, and that's useful for a customer. I know it improved my experience. And yes, they do sell more to me, but it improves my experience. So I think that those kinds of AI use cases are the more useful ones at this point. The thing that scares me badly is agentic AI taking over tasks based on bad data, right? Based on maybe really bad data, because as we know, over 20 years
shitty, to call it shitty data, yeah?
Really bad. Okay, so on-prem data. Let's say you do a brownfield in the SAP world, right? From ECC to S4HANA, just because you have to meet the deadline 2027, or you feel as though you do. You don't want to take on a green field or maybe even blue and say, I'm just going to take the whole shooting match and bring it over brownfield so I can do it quickly and meet the deadline. Well, what do you have there? You have 20 years of old crap in a way. I mean, not all of it's crap. Right, but you have you want to train your AI model. I guess you use external data, but the bulk of it is probably internal data that you're training it on, right? Supposedly. Now, there's the cybersecurity aspect of that too, which I don't even want to bring up. But let's just say you use all internal data and it's brownfield, and you get an agent that says, okay, I'm going to take in an invoice. I scan an invoice. That invoice gets matched to a PO by the agent. Then the agent turns it over to AP, or no, maybe it doesn't stop there. It says, I'm going to take it all the way through and pay it without a human.
Goodbye,
money. I mean, if you got AI saying, and AI can do this, by the way, it can do this, make recommendations and say, that's out of tolerance, or that is so out of tolerance that it means the invoice was probably entered wrong. I've seen these kinds of AI use cases, very, very good. But if you don't stop and let the human in at some point, you got a big mess, I think. And
now that's getting interesting, because where does predictive start to become prescriptive? Because I mean, we had the topic efficiency before. Efficiency means do more with less, means the humans in the loop will become, well, less with more work, and we do see them or the machine working quite well, so the predictions are quite good. Means I trust them like a co-worker, and I just hit the button, okay. So this is the usual consequence. Yeah. Now, the same mistake that then can happen could have been done by me. So where's the difference in the machine making the mistake or me making the mistake? I trusted the machine, my boss trusts me, so where's the problem?
I think that the AI can help very much in that area. I think that in identifying anomalies, AI is very helpful. It could be.
Yeah, it's very helpful. So now it comes with a suggestion on how to fix it.
Suggestion,
and
right?
I don't have the time to, as the human in the loop, I don't have the time to validate it. Rather, even not
well,
speaking
you wouldn't
of,
have had the time to
verifying.
validate it before. AI agents, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't have the time then,
means
you're not going to have the time now.
Means the same would have happened. So why is there a need to keep me in the loop?
I think that
dilemma.
I think that it still needs interpretation. That's just me. That's just me saying this.
I wouldn't disagree, but
it's just frightening to me because I guess it's because I used to be a finance guy, right? So what I see in finance, and I see things about, making workflows and creating automation in finance, for instance, right? But I see finance managers, let's say, being pushed down more towards the job to be done, down the chain, and saying, I don't need to get involved until here, but I still need to get involved, because what the big thing is deciding which ones to pay, right? And that could be based on a number of factors, including, just judgment, including we've been dealing with these guys for a long time and we like them. I mean, that could be something. I mean, if you just pay based on their aging, then maybe you can do it with an agent. Maybe that's not a risky thing. But I think most CFOs are pretty risk averse when it comes to things like this, right? And they want to time it, because if there's a huge AP invoice and then they're lagging on collecting, then they want to time it when it's paid, right? They want to hold on to it as long as possible and maybe get some matching going on there, which I don't believe an AI agent would do. So something could go. In other words, something can go out the door, and that's assuming that all the data is right.
Which is
what happens when the data is wrong. I don't know.
The invoice better be right.
It better be right.
There we are back in the original question. So now we have investments into efficiencies, means ERP.
Yep.
And then we possibly have the conflict of investing into engagements that result in experiences.
Yes.
So is this a conflict? Or can this somehow be bridged? Should this be bridged? What is more important, efficiency or engagement with experience?
That's a tricky question, right?
If it was easy, we wouldn't have you here.
Well, I would say customer experience trumps all.
Customer happiness. Yay. Hallelujah. That is the goal.
That old ERP? Come on.
But how to achieve it?
Yeah, no, in all seriousness, I think that the investment in something like a CPQ and maybe in some cases e-commerce and all of those things is a really good investment. Because if it makes you happier, your customers happier, it makes their experience better, then that's the most important thing, right? Because that drives revenue. The other is just maybe making cost lower, but I don't even know if it's that. It's efficiencies. Maybe, I don't know, do you need a few less people, or you getting things like your invoices going through faster or something like that? What's the benefit? I mean, at least a customer facing thing, like if you put in a CPQ or an e-commerce with the CPQ or something like that, could be really, really valuable to your customers and could make you very sticky and maybe give you a differentiation versus your competitors.
I was wondering, then, what you would give us for your personal take on that. I sometimes, my observation, have the impression that the ERP vendors and creators, if they have a CRM in their portfolio, they like to hide it to keep it off the record, or and by all means, do not promote it. Are they not believing that they can do good stuff? And why are they not talking about it? Such as Infor, such as SAP, such as some other famous vendors, which are knowledgeable for delivering ERP solutions or financials or HR. I was wondering why they are keeping this secret or as a secret.
I'm not really sure, except to say maybe it's inferior. It's just inferior to what you can get outside. That would be my guess. I don't know for sure. I mean, because they can sell more licenses. Why not sell CRM? In the case of Infor, they have a CRM.
They have two at least. One,
at least two. Infor specifically.
Honest, both bought, such as a Salesforce partner and Interact or whatever it was called. They integrated, and the old Sales Logics, that was it.
Yeah. There's been several iterations of that, and that might be the reason why they kind of shy away from it a little bit, because it's an interface product, and they'll have something in a, like you have a customer master and you have leads and sales opportunities within the ERP, right? But is it a great CRM? No. So they say, if you are an enterprise customer, which Infor, so I'll divide it by size of customers, right? So I'll say Infor is an enterprise play and goes against SAP and Oracle, right, at the higher end. So they would say, you probably have Salesforce, so we have an interface to Salesforce, so keep it, right? That I'm just speculating. So they wouldn't say, because enterprise level, they have a CRM, right? They have something. They have Microsoft CRM. They have, Salesforce or whatever. That's a REST API link through the iPaaS to the ERP. Not a problem. Easy, right? So they say, no, we're not going to force you to give up that Salesforce, right? You could just interface it with our ERP, right? So they might deliberately downgrade. Plus, it's a separate license cost. If they already have something, then they might not want to substitute it. Their Salesforce might have gotten accustomed to Salesforce, right? And they don't want to replace it with the ERP's CRM. So I'm just speculating on that, right? On the other hand, when you're talking about an SMB, you're talking NetSuite, for instance. NetSuite is pretty strong, or it's strong enough that most of your SMBs would be happy with it, and it's part of the package. So why would you buy Salesforce, right? Because Salesforce is big and it's expensive, and you have to make choices. And hey, there's a CRM in there that works. They even got a little Suite Commerce. They got a little e-commerce thing. It's not very sophisticated from what I'm told, but it's not a WooCommerce or Magento or something like that, right? But it probably gets the job done. You put your item master out there and you can choose, and it has inventory there, and stuff like that, right? But it's all one thing, and that's the advantage that a NetSuite would have when offering. They would play up their CRM. They do play up their CRM.
For a number of years, they were probably the best CRM you could find in an ERP.
After that.
Yeah, Yes, I think it's quite good. But it kind of breaks down based on the size of the customer or the prospect, right? Because if you're enterprise level, you've got something in the CRM area that's probably really strong, like a Salesforce. I mean, I think Salesforce is still the number one, right, in the CRM world
with quite a margin.
Quite a margin, yeah.
They have more market share than the next four combined.
Okay, exactly, yeah.
But there's a comment that just came in, which is quite interesting. So on one hand, Kuram says, I'm rephrasing this right now. So we are expected to do more with less, and with that AI will be the transformation in business systems. Yeah? So now, if we are expected to do more with less, and if we are automating stuff away, what would you see then as the transformational change in ERPs that an AI can cause, or does create, other than getting the human out of the loop?
I mean, I think they need to come up with a lot more use cases, but they will probably double down here in the next, several months, right? This area is continuing to progress very rapidly. So I think they're going to double down on the things like customer service, like sales, like marketing, automation with AI. And I think it can really help. What I don't see the agentic AI doing much of is the operational parts of the ERP. So like production and stuff like that. I don't see to date. I see finance, I see sales, I see marketing, customer service. I don't see production and purchasing and, and stuff like that on the AI side. So I think they're going to double down on that. The ERP vendors, I'm talking about the ERP vendors, right? And then somebody like an OpenAI or whatever, or Microsoft, what do they do? That's going to be a very interesting thing, right? Because Microsoft is so allied closely with OpenAI, I think, on developing these copilots. And you heard a lot about Copilot, and then you didn't hear anything, which I find strange, because I thought they had this very close relationship. And then he comes out and says SaaS is dead. So I don't know what that means exactly, from a Microsoft perspective, let's say.
That means
are they going to go full on agentic AI and replace Microsoft Dynamics 365 with AI agents? I don't know. It could be interesting.
Yeah, well, they would need to rewrite it. But if you said so, they are doubling down on CRM side scenarios, which I would kind of dispute with two arguments. One is, if you're looking at the agent or the AI side of SAP, for example, so they have a website with all those agents and copilots, assistants, however you want to call them, that are available. The vast majority of them are on the ERP side. Unsurprisingly, as SAP kind of is an ERP company. This is point one. Point two is, a while ago, was it November, October, the CEO of Klarna, which is a Swedish payment provider, who basically said, well, I can get rid of my Salesforce and of my NetSuite, not Netflix, NetSuite, by using Gen AI. And he recently even figured out that he can replace himself, which he wasn't too fond of. But
he said, I can obsolete myself.
No, he basically formulated it the other way around. I figured that stuff can make me obsolete, and I don't really like it.
Time to take that retirement package.
Yeah. So, but then, what are the impacts? So apparently, there are people who are innovative enough, smart enough, crazy enough to say, okay, I can replace my ERP system with some Gen AI stuff, some probabilistic Gen AI stuff. And others are saying, nah. So whereas back to Kuram's, I hope it didn't butcher his name now, Kuram's question is, how will this transformative effect be? What is the effect?
What is going to be the effect?
Yeah. Other than more automation is just not, well, that's not really transformative. This is just
I think
doing the same different.
I mean, the number of use cases are going to increase for sure. I think that the problem with it is, the most of the ERP, I think, 25% now for SAP or so is on the cloud. And I guess you can run AI on-prem, but I think it's some sort of a different animal. I don't know. I think that certainly the AI use cases are going to increase, probably exponentially, right, as they get all these things worked out. But I think the potential for it to change ERP, given the fact that many, well over half, and probably will be that way for a long time, is on-prem, is that going to really have as much of an impact, right? Because isn't it pretty much cloud? They have to be on the cloud to take full advantage from the ERP vendors.
Does the ERP need to be on the cloud in order to use some cloud servers? I would doubt that.
Well, that's true. You make a good point, but I'm just saying, the speed of the migrations isn't what the ERP vendors want. It still lags way behind, so that might be a hitch in the get along here. But will certainly increase.
What do you see as possible high value scenarios within an ERP that also contribute to, a better customer experience or better engagement so that customers may experience something well? I formulated that awkwardly because I think the experience is on the client, on the customer side, and you can't deliver an experience. You can engage. That's why I formulated that awkwardly.
I think it's going to be kind of behind the scenes, but the customer will be experiencing maybe faster, more accurate, more attractive offers coming from the vendor, from the company, as a result of AI predictions and, some predictive work that it's doing behind the scenes, some co-pilot activity to say, this is this customer, this is a customer profile for this customer, the ability to ask it questions and have it react without running reports and things like that, which take a long time. I think that's got to improve the customer experience.
Means journey orchestration becomes better, yeah? But it of course begs the question, cui bono, right? So what is a better offer? Better for me as the vendor or for you as the customer? Also, with regards to pricing, they all have their price list, and virtually none, especially when it comes to enterprise pricing, virtually none of them remotely adheres to their price lists. So wouldn't there be a good use case in directly coming with
for pricing,
a good price,
optimal pricing? I've actually seen that use case. Actually, on Infor, they had a pricing recommendations AI set up for Gen AI to say, and you could just accept or not accept. And then they have the price lists would come through to the sales order lines, right? And then you have an AI recommendation off to the right for each line on the sales order. Based on what criteria, I don't know, but AI is making a different recommendation than the price lists come with.
Yeah, I think there are companies that are doing exactly that, like pros on, they're famous for airlines, then Price Effects comes to mind, that are doing particular that suggest a price that is good for the vendor. It might be acceptable, or might be well acceptable.
Might be acceptable to the customer. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And they get it quick, and they know it, right?
Because real time,
Yeah, right. Because they don't know, like the customer won't know. They'll get a quote right there online that shows whatever price they chose. So they could take the AI recommended price or their own price list price. And if you leave it up to a salesperson, they're always going to take the lower price, right? Because they want to make the deal. But you can definitely have that. That's a very good use case, actually. That's a phenomenal use case. And I think also the bundling thing that I mentioned is a very good use case too. And then I would argue that probably benefits both the company and the customer, right? Because the company benefits because, hey, they're upselling, they're selling more. But the customer benefits because this goes with this. And like on Amazon, it makes a suggestion that's based on history or whatever criteria. And I would also say that the AI can go against the data and find out things like inventory on hand and available to promise and all of those things without running a planning engine. Because an ERP would say, I run my planning engine once a week, and it updates all my ATPs basically, right? As a result, and you get the ATP that's already a couple, 2-3 days old or whatever, or it runs a little mini net change procedure that gives you an ATP on the fly. Well, the AI could use the same logic and just go get it in like that, and boom, you got a ATP.
And the AI is faster, is knowledgeable, has all the pricing books like this thick in its database, and is more responsive than the deal desk with the human, which is nearly collapsing on 3 requests from 3 customers and just running through his 25 to 67 price list and arrangements and configurations he has to do, which is a disaster area. Yeah. So
it's
really could be.
And it's very static. It's very static.
Yeah,
right? The price book is very static.
It's a surprise pack. You never know what's coming out.
Yeah, I think, that already exists. Infor has it. That already exists. So, and the upselling or bundling thing too, I think that's a use case that they have. In fact, I have some videos. I've got a whole bunch of videos that I'm starting to put out, and these kinds of things I find very interesting. So I'll be publishing some of these on LinkedIn, these videos and things in my little hub project here. So
Ralph just brought up an interesting point. Combine this, the sales rep or the sales team is slow, with the already existing situation that about 2/3 of the whole buying journey in B2B is already taken by the client before a salesperson is contacted. Anyway, don't we just get rid of the sales? Do we just get rid of the salesperson?
Hey, I have been a salesperson in the past.
Well, Ralph too.
Yeah.
He still is. Yeah. Well,
this is a reality of today, right? The reality is that when you're looking for a product, what do? You go on, you review YouTube videos of things. So you spend, 85, 90% of your time, choosing a vendor yourself and then approaching the salesperson only then, right? So this is just a reality, and that's being in marketing now. This is a reality that I'm trying to deal with inbound actions, like allowing them a huge video library to do their research and make their own decisions and then come to us, things like that. But that's just a reality. And it's, in a way, that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing because if you put the right tools in people's hands, and that includes some AI, of course, that you should be able to make a pretty educated decision about something in a case where there's very little value add. Right? Because you've got an ERP software that's right. They've all been around for 20 odd years, and they have features and options and everything. And, you can bludgeon each other on those things and or whatever, right? But they do virtually the same thing. And then you get into areas where the Gen AI really comes into play and gives you some distinction versus your competitors. I think that's really useful. And I think things like in the past that were a big deal, like an ERP software selection, right? You go to an SI to do an ERP software selection for you. What is Accenture going to tell you? You've got 2 choices, SAP and Oracle. Pick one. I don't think it's going to go much outside of
more money on both.
In which case, I should ask us.
So you pick one. But now, all kidding aside, I think that I like to see the user or the customer or whatever have more power in their hands to make decisions. And I think that AI is a very good tool in that. And it can help in that way. And when you have AI use cases that kind of take the internal people out of the loop, in some cases it's warranted. I mean, what is a salesperson really adding when you talk about pricing? They get a price from a price book. They don't know where it came from, right? It might say came from price book, but as far as they know, they might just reduce it because they want to make the sale. But a salesperson isn't entering, adding a lot of value to that process, right? You can get AI to make a better recommendation in that case. And then also, I just hesitate about the agent, right? I always hesitate about the agent. I'm all for automation, and I'm all for putting power into customers' hands and improving the customer experience. I'm all for all of that. And I think AI plays a role in that. But I think when you make the final decision, like let's just say you think you're leaning towards a certain ERP package, for instance, you're buying from people. At the end of the day, right? You're buying from people, not an agent. So you might get lots of information and you might get 85% there, and you might want to kind of avoid a salesperson up to that process. Then you might be thinking, oh, I want to choose a partner now. I want to choose a partner to help me implement. That's more important. That's much more important, in my opinion, being a partner. It's much more important to choose the correct partner. And when you choose a partner, it's a people decision. Who do you trust? And I think when agents come in, or when AI, let's say, for example, when I see an AI ad, I run the other way. This is just me personally. I don't think
there are no places to run anymore.
They're all AI ads. But I just don't think they're authentic. And maybe I'm old school and I do my own writing and things like this. But I think that an AI avatar speaking to you with a mouth that's going really weird or something like that, and where it's obvious it's AI, is not very authentic. And I think the sales process and the customer experience is that you want to use AI to get you to a certain point, and you want to make the experience better, but you do not want to take the human completely out of the process, because that's when you start to lose. I think that's probably controversial, but that's okay.
Not super controversial, but getting to wrap this all up, I have to ask, if we accept the notion that well-implemented ERP is a positive contributor to customer experience, then doesn't that kind of mean that the differentiation between front office and back office is obsolete? Nice easy question to end.
I think so, because if you treat it like this is an extension of the back office into the front office and it's all integrated, maybe that distinction is not that big of a deal anymore.
Fairly said.
I mean, if it's a smooth process all the way from a CRM through a CPQ, through a PLM, through an ERP, and it's really transparent to you as the customer, does it really matter, front office or back office?
Probably not. And hey, I'm on that boat with you. But we have reached the end of our hour, which zipped by as usual. So that is your CRMKonvo for the day. Dan, thank you very much for your time and your insightful answers to our annoying questions.
They were great. They were great questions, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Now, next week, for our audience, we are going to be taking a hiatus because, well, we have things to do. that don't allow us to shoot another episode. But the week after that, we will be streaming live from the Sugar Analyst Summit with, I'm not saying this, with a raft of sweet topics. I'm going to get you for that.
Yeah, there you said it.
Yeah.
And of course, there was no pun intended, of course.
Of course not. But again, thank you all very much for joining. If you'd like to see this episode again or catch any of our other ones, you can visit us on YouTube at CRMKonvos with a K. But until the next time we meet, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.